What if I told you a racist Karen broke into a black man's private pool, claimed it as her own, then tried to paint him as the criminal? But what she didn't know was that he wasn't just a homeowner, he was a strategist. And by the time he was done, she'd be publicly humiliated, legally silenced, and the entire community would be celebrating in the very pool she tried to steal. I don't know who you are, but this is a private pool, Karen barked. Well, floating in my damn pool. The sun was just beginning to set as Tyrone pulled into the curved driveway of his 5-acre estate. After 3 grueling weeks of back-to-back investor meetings in Dubai, he had returned home to Atlanta hoping for nothing more than silence, a glass of bourbon, and a long soak in the peace he'd earned. But what he found instead shattered that dream instantly. There she was floating, in his pool, a woman he'd never seen before, in a wide-brimmed straw hat, holding a mimosa like she was on vacation in the Hamptons. And not just her kids were cannonballing off the edge into the deep end, their flip-flops tossed carelessly on his polished travertine pool deck. A Bluetooth speaker blasted some generic pop song, and half a dozen water balloons bobbed along the surface like it was a public splash pad. Tyrone stood still for a second, confused, blinking. Did he pull into the wrong house? No, this was his home. The modern black-on-white ranch with the panoramic windows, the 3-car garage, the custom-built waterfall he designed himself. This was his sanctuary, and it had just been invaded. He walked slowly to the edge of the patio, the echo of his Italian leather shoes alerting her. She didn't flinch. She looked up lazily over the rim of her sunglasses and had the audacity to frown. "Can I help you?" she asked, as if he was the trespasser. "You're in the wrong place," Tyrone said, voice calm but eyes cold. "This is private property." The woman scoffed. "I don't know who you are, but this is a community pool. We have every right to be here." Tyrone tilted his head. "Community pool," he echoed, as if the words themselves offended the oxygen. She gestured around like she was showing him his own backyard. "The realtor said this whole development shares access to the amenities. My HOA dues pay for this pool." That's when it hit him. She must have moved into the development next door, the one with the cookie-cutter houses and fake lakes. They had an HOA, but his property, his land, was carved out of the development during the original zoning. He'd fought to buy it off-market, filed the paperwork to exclude it from HOA jurisdiction, and built a private residence with a gated perimeter. It was no secret. You could see the private property, no trespassing signs from the road. Tyrone narrowed his eyes. "Ma'am," he said, struggling to stay composed, "I own every square inch of this land. There is no shared access, no amenities, no community." He let the weight of that last word hang heavy. She sat up, indignant. "Listen, I don't care who you think you are, but you don't own this country club lifestyle. This is America. We share. Not here. You don't." Just then, one of her kids darted toward the outdoor kitchen and began pulling open drawers. Tyrone watched in disbelief. She didn't say a word to stop him. Instead, she snapped her fingers toward Tyrone like she was calling a waiter. "While you're here, can you bring me another drink? I'm parched." That was it. Tyrone turned and walked back inside his house, but not in defeat. He was done talking. He pulled up the security camera feed from his phone, full, high-def angles of her trespassing. He noted the time. He opened the Notes app and started typing names, dates, and details. He'd learned long ago that when people don't respect your voice, you make them respect your paperwork. Inside the living room was exactly how he left it: minimal, cool, and quiet. But something about her presence outside contaminated it. He felt like a stranger in his own home. How long had this been going on while he was gone? Had she done this before? Had others? He stepped into his home office and printed out a fresh batch of private property, no trespassing, surveillance in use signs. This time, in bold red, the kind you don't miss, the kind courts respect. By the time he walked back out to post them, the woman and her kids had vanished. Not a word, not an apology. Just wet footprints leading out to the road, like ghosts disappearing into the dusk. Tyrone stood by the edge of the pool, staring into the water that no longer felt like his. He built this place from the ground up. From the concrete pour, to the landscaping, to the saltwater system that didn't burn your eyes. Every detail reflected his vision, his sacrifice, his journey from nothing to this dot. And now, some entitled, the stranger had come in, laid claim to it like he was the outsider. But this was only the beginning. She had trespassed on more than his property. She had trespassed on his peace, and Tyrone wasn't about to let that slide. "You people always act like you own everything," Karen scoffed. But Tyrone did. He literally owned everything she stood on. Tyrone had hoped that catching Karen lounging in his pool the first time was just a fluke or one-time misunderstanding. Maybe she got the address wrong. Maybe she thought she was at a friend's who tried to give her the benefit of the doubt, though the sight of her kids throwing their wet towels onto his designer patio furniture had rubbed him the wrong way. Still, he gave her a polite warning. This is private property. Please don't come back. But the next morning, Tyrone opened his bedroom curtains and saw her again. There she was, sunglasses on, sipping a mimosa she didn't pay for, like she owned the damn estate. This time, she brought more people. A woman in a sun hat, a teenage boy doing cannonballs into the pool, and a little dog running wild through his rose garden. Tyrone's patience was running thin. He walked out, calm but firm. Ma'am, I told you yesterday. This is not a public pool. This is my home. You're trespassing. Karen didn't flinch. She didn't apologize. She just rolled her eyes and muttered, "You must be new here." "Excuse me. This is a community pool. I've lived here for 7 years. This pool was always open until you people moved in." Tyrone froze. "You people." That phrase hit him like a slap. His voice lowered. "There is no HOA here. I bought this land 5 years ago and developed it myself. I own everything you see here. The pool, the yard, the gate, even the grass you're standing on." But Karen just laughed, as if he was a child making up stories. "Please," she said, brushing him off. "I know the rules. You can't gate off community property just because you've got a little money and think you're better than everyone." Tyrone took a step closer. "This isn't a conversation anymore. This is a warning. Leave. Don't come back." She smirked. "Or what? You'll call the cops. Good luck with that." That comment was no accident. She knew exactly what she was implying. Tyrone wasn't stupid. He'd seen how stories like this ended for black men who dared to assert ownership, and she was betting on that. That he'd stay silent, that he'd be afraid. She had no idea who she was dealing with. 2 days later, she came back, this time with decorations. Tyrone came home from a grocery run to find balloons hanging on his fence, tables set up around his pool, kids running in, wet clothes through his living room door, left wide open. Asterisk, a birthday party. On his property, without permission. Asterisk, Tyrone didn't yell. He didn't call the police. He went upstairs, grabbed his camera, and started filming. Asterisk, Karen spotted him from below, and shouted, "Oh, don't be such a grump. This is for the neighborhood kids. You should be thankful we're using your pool." Asterisk, that's when he knew this wasn't confusion. This wasn't ignorance. This was entitlement. This was racism wrapped in fake smiles and passive-aggressive cheer. This was a woman who thought he didn't belong on his own property. Asterisk, that night, Tyrone sat in his home office and started documenting every video, every photo, every gate code entry, every security cam angle. He backed it up to the cloud and emailed a copy to his lawyer. He also ran a check on her. Karen didn't even live in the same neighborhood. She lived 2 streets down, in a rundown rental house outside the gated community. She had no access rights, no invitation, no claim to anything she'd been using like it was her birthright. And yet, she acted like he was the outsider. Asterisk, the next morning, things got worse. Asterisk, Tyrone opened his front door to find a letter taped to it, a printed-out email thread titled, "Neighborhood Concerns About New Resident." Inside were lines that made his blood boil. "He's confrontational." Asterisk, "My kids don't feel safe." Asterisk, "He gives off an angry vibe. He should be watched." Asterisk, the worst part, it was sent to half the neighborhood. Asterisk, it didn't matter that he was a successful entrepreneur, a veteran, or that he donated to local charities every month. Karen had painted a narrative and some people had chosen to believe her. Tyrone had worked his whole life to be above reproach. Now a woman who broke into his pool was calling him dangerous. That was the moment the switch flipped. He looked at the envelope again. He could have cursed. Could have stormed into a street. Could have ripped down the balloons still tangled in his hedge. But Tyrone was done playing defense. Asterisk, he didn't want revenge. He wanted a reckoning. He reached for his phone and dialed a number. "Hey Alana," he said. "It's time to activate the legal strategy. I've got footage, documents, witnesses. I need trespassing charges, civil claims, and a defamation angle." Asterisk, his lawyer, Alana Mason, had handled celebrities, CEOs, and real estate billionaires. Asterisk Karen was about to find out that Tyrone wasn't just another black man with a pool. He was the storm she never saw coming. The real poison wasn't just in her words. It was in the whispers that followed them. Tyrone didn't expect silence to become so loud. It started small side glances from the couple walking their golden retriever past his driveway. They used to smile. Now they just hurried along. Then the kid across the street stopped waving at him like he used to. Tyrone brushed it off. Maybe it was just in his head, until he overheard it. He was out front trimming his hedges when he heard Karen's voice carrying through the wind. She was on the sidewalk 2 houses down, talking to Mrs. Delaney, the elderly widow who always gave out peppermint bark during Christmas. "I'm just saying," Karen said in that clipped, dramatic tone. "You don't really know who he is. He doesn't even act like he belongs here." Mrs. Delaney nodded hesitantly, her eyes flicking toward Tyrone's home. That was the moment. It shifted. Karen wasn't just invading his space anymore. She was invading his identity. She had launched a subtle smear campaign, dressed in the polite language of concern, the worst kind. The kind that spreads like mold, slow, quiet, and deadly. Tyrone had dealt with racism before. The blatant kind. The shouted slurs. The store clerks who followed him around. But this was different. This was strategic. Surgical. Karen wasn't loud. She was manipulative. She used coded words. Aggressive, intimidating, and each time she said them, she planted seeds in people's minds. Soon. Tyrone noticed the way people crossed the street to avoid him during his morning walks. Packages started arriving late or not at all. One Amazon driver actually admitted, "Some folks said this wasn't your property anymore. Sorry man, didn't want to get caught up in anything." Not his property anymore. What the hell did that mean? Then, it got uglier. One morning, Tyrone found something wedged into his front gate. A folded piece of paper wrapped in plastic. Inside, in jagged red ink, were the words, "Go back where you came from." He stared at it for a long time. Not in shock. In calculation. He took the paper inside, set it on the kitchen counter, and calmly opened his laptop. It was time to move differently. Tyrone didn't react with emotion. He reacted with precision. He called his lawyer, not the one who handled real estate contracts, but Marcus Langston. Marcus wasn't just any lawyer. He specialized in civil rights violations, defamation suits, and high-profile take. If there was anyone who knew how to dismantle a Karen's kingdom of lies, it was him. "Tell me everything," Marcus said. Tyrone did. Every intrusion, every ignored warning, every racial microaggression she weaponized into neighborhood fear. Marcus didn't flinch. "Good. That means she's built a pattern. And patterns are how we win." They began compiling a file. Timestamps of Karen's pool visits. Surveillance footage of her unauthorized entries. Screenshots of her online posts. Tyrone even had a recording of their second confrontation where she yelled, "People like you shouldn't own property like this anyway." Marcus was right. That wasn't just ignorance. That was evidence. But Tyrone wasn't done. He wanted every base covered. He hired a digital investigation firm to dig into Karen's property records. The result was poetic justice. She didn't even live in the same gated community. She lived 2 streets over, in a development that had no pool. That's why she kept trespassing. That same day, Tyrone walked outside and looked over his property. Didn't just see a pool anymore. He saw a courtroom, a battleground, and he would not be the one on trial. The next weekend, he heard shouting again. Karen was in the street, arguing with a neighbor. Apparently, someone had told her to stop using the black guy's pool. She was livid. Her voice cracked as she yelled, "You think I'm scared of him? Let him sue me. I know people in this town." That was her mistake. She said it aloud. She said it publicly, and Tyrone recorded every second from his porch. He knew what was coming. The same community that once whispered about him was now turning its gaze toward her. Especially when the video started to circulate online. It wasn't posted by Tyrone. It was uploaded by a young Naba Jamal, a teen studying digital journalism, who'd had enough of Karen's antics. His caption was simple. "This lady's been trespassing for weeks, and now she's mad she's getting caught. Watch this mess." The post blew up. Within hours, people from all over the country were chiming in. Many had dealt with their own Karens. Others couldn't believe how calm Tyrone had stayed through it all. The tide was turning. This time, the whispers weren't about Tyrone. They were about justice. Karen came again, but this time the gate didn't open. It was 10:03 a.m. on a sunny Saturday when the familiar sound of heels clacking against Tyrone's stone driveway echoed once again. Karen, wearing an oversized sun hat, flip-flops, and an attitude, stood at the wrought iron gate with her sunglasses halfway down her nose. In her hand, a beach towel and a reusable bag full of snacks. Behind her were her 2 kids, a boombox, and a portable cooler. But today wasn't going to go the way it had before. As she pressed the intercom button, expecting the usual passive confrontation, something different happened. A camera above the gate swiveled toward her. A red light blinked on, then a calm, confident voice came through the speaker. Karen, Tyrone said, this is your last warning. Trespass again, and I'll see you in court. There was a long pause. Then laughter. You're bluffing, she said with a smirk. This is a community pool, and I have every right. No. Tyrone cut in coldly. This is private property. The deed is under my name. GPS coordinates, lot lines, tax records, I own it all. And this entire conversation is being recorded. Her face twitched. And before you say anything else, Tyrone continued, I've installed motion sensors. 24-hour surveillance, and the footage gets uploaded in real time to a cloud server. You step 1 foot past that gate, I won't just call the cops, I'll own your next paycheck. Karen stepped back, startled. This wasn't the polite, overly patient Tyrone she thought she could walk over. This was a man who had drawn a line, and now the spotlight was on her. I'll call the HOA, she shrieked, hoping to regain the upper hand. There is no HOA, Tyrone replied coolly. You knew that. You lied. And I've already confirmed with the county that you're not even part of this zone. Karen opened her mouth, but no words came out. Her kids looked at her, confused. Then she turned and stormed off, muttering, we'll see about this. And Tyrone. He didn't move from his seat on the porch. He just leaned back, sipping his lemonade, watching the security feed on his tablet, as she retreated like a villain exposed. But the war wasn't over. That night Tyrone's phone buzzed. A friend had sent him a link to a Facebook post. Karen had uploaded a selfie, her face blotchy with forced tears, and a caption that read, greater than we tried to use the community pool today, and was screamed at by an aggressive man. This is what happens when people like us just want to enjoy public spaces. My kids were terrified. Please share. This is America now. It had nearly 400 shares in 2 hours. The comment section was a mess. Typical, disgusting behavior. Black men think they can bully women now. Tyrone felt the sting of betrayal again. But this wasn't new. This was just a modern twist on an old playbook. Flip the narrative, paint the black man as a threat, and weaponize white fragility. But this time, Tyrone had receipts. He uploaded a video compilation from his security cams. Clear footage of Karen walking in uninvited multiple times, hosting a full birthday party, and then returning after being asked not to. There was no yelling, no threats, just boundaries she refused to respect. Then came the drone shot. Tyrone had flown it last week to capture overhead images for his upcoming landscaping project. It clearly showed the layout, his gated estate, the pool, the property lines, and Karen's house. Nearly 2 streets over, outside the private community. In other words, she had no business being there. He posted the video with the caption, greater than, this is what entitlement looks like. And what happens when you document it. He raised an eyebrow. Didn't you say I didn't belong here? That I was aggressive? You said all that. Online. Publicly. Karen wiped a tear with her sleeve. People are calling me a bigot. My husband's not even speaking to me. My kids' people at school are bullying them. Please, I'll delete the post. Just drop the lawsuit. Tyrone stood still in his foyer, breathing in the air-conditioned silence of his home. For weeks, this woman had turned his life into a circus. She'd publicly painted him as a dangerous man just because she didn't like being told no. Now that the walls were caving in on her, she wanted a deal. I don't need an apology behind closed doors, he said coldly. You did your damage in public. You'll answer for it in public. She slumped. What do you want? That was the wrong question. The next day, her attorney called Tyrone's desperate, offering a monetary settlement to avoid going to court. Tyrone refused. I don't need her money, he told his lawyer. I want the truth. In her own words, with cameras rolling, asterisks so the terms were laid out. In writing, Karen would record a full, public apology, in the same tone, same energy, and same platform as her original viral post. No edits, no crocodile tears. She'd take full responsibility for her lies, her racism, and her trespassing. And only then would Tyrone consider dropping the civil charges. Asterisk the next few days was silent. No intercom buzzing. No random gate visits, just silence. Until the video arrived, Tyrone sat with his attorney and watched. Asterisk Karen sat in her kitchen, pale and nervous, her voice barely above a whisper. Asterisk greater than to my community, my neighbors, and especially to Mr. Tyrone Coleman I owe you all an apology. I trespassed repeatedly on property that didn't belong to me. I spread false information that led to harassment and damage to a man's name and peace. My actions were driven by entitlement, ignorance, and yes, racial bias. I was wrong. I see that now, and I ask for your forgiveness. Asterisk Tyrone paused. The video halfway. Run it again, he said. I want to see her eyes this time. Asterisk, they played it again. No smugness, no performative tears. Just raw, embarrassed honesty. He'd seen better apologies, but he'd also seen worse verdicts. This would do. Asterisk, his attorney sent over the final agreement. She would never enter his property again, in any form. If she breached it once, even by a foot, the full lawsuit would reactivate. No negotiations, no warnings, just war. Asterisk Karen signed, quietly. Asterisk words spread quickly. Tyrone didn't post the video, but someone else did. The same neighbor who had once defended Karen now uploaded the clip, writing, "Turns out we were wrong about him, and she finally admitted it." Asterisk the video trended on local forums and Facebook groups. Some called it accountability. Others called it karma. But no one was calling Tyrone aggressive anymore. Asterisk, he didn't celebrate. He didn't throw it in her face. He just reclaimed his peace. Asterisk neighbors waved at him now. The ones who once crossed the street now offered baked goods and small talk. But Tyrone wasn't after validation. He never had been. He was after something else. Respect. And he'd earned it the hard way. Asterisk the pool sat calm again. No more uninvited guests. Just the quiet ripple of justice, still echoing through the backyard where once a woman thought she could take whatever she wanted. But not anymore. Asterisk, the sun was warm. The grill was sizzling, and laughter echoed across Tyrone's backyard as the scent of smoked ribs and grilled corn filled the air. After months of stress, confrontation, and legal battles, today felt like a different world, a world Tyrone had built with patience, power, and purpose. Asterisk, this wasn't just any gathering. It was Juneteenth, a celebration of freedom, legacy, and resilience. But this year, it wasn't just about history, it was personal. Tyrone had opened his pool and backyard to every respectful neighbor, regardless of color, class, or background. Not because he had to, because he wanted to. He wanted them to see what true ownership, true strength, and true grace looked like. Asterisk, the vibe was electric. Kids splashed in the crystal clear pool. A DJ spun smooth soul and modern R&B from a shaded corner. Tables were covered in home-cooked dishes. Sweet potato pie, mac and cheese, collard greens, and fresh lemonade. It was the kind of community Karen had pretended to believe in, except this time, it was real. Asterisk Tyrone stood near the grill, tongs in hand, wearing a crisp white polo with a black fist emblem stitched near the heart. His best friend Marcus slapped him on the back and laughed. "Man, you really flipped the damn script, huh?" Asterisk, Tyrone smiled. "Sometimes you don't need to yell, you just let the facts speak. Let the law do its job. Let their own hate hang them." "Facts," Marcus said, handing him a cold bottle of sweet tea. The guests knew the story. It had spread all over town and far beyond. The same neighbors who once watched in silence when Karen claimed his pool now stood beside him, shaking his hand, thanking him for standing tall. They saw what he endured, not just the trespassing, but the quiet racism, the viral defamation, the smear campaigns. They saw how he responded with strategy, with control, and with dignity. Asterisk, across the yard. A group of teenagers played basketball near the half-court Tyrone had built for the neighborhood. Two little girls braided each other's hair beneath the shade of a tree. No fences, no lines drawn. Just peace. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. Tyrone stepped up to the microphone near the patio. Conversations died down, music lowered, and the crowd turned to face him. Asterisk, I just want to say a few words, Tyrone began, his voice deep and calm. I bought this land 6 years ago. Worked 2 jobs, slept on floors, skipped vacations, and sacrificed everything to get here. And when I finally made it, when I finally felt like I could breathe, someone tried to take it from me. Not with a gun, but with entitlement. Not by force, but by assumption that I didn't belong here. That my skin meant this space couldn't be mine. People murmured in agreement, nodding solemnly. But I didn't fight back the way they wanted me to. I didn't lose my temper. I didn't threaten. I didn't scream. I documented. I planned. And when the time came, I used every tool the system gives. If you know how to use it, that's how you win. Not just for yourself, but for every black man who's been treated like a trespasser in his own home. Asterisk, a few claps turned into thunderous applause. Even a few tears. Asterisk, Tyrone raised a hand. Now, I didn't host this party to talk about her. She already apologized publicly. She's dealing with her consequences. That chapter is closed. This day is about joy. About showing our kids what pride looks like. What ownership looks like. What community can look like. He paused. You see, she thought she could erase me, replace me, use my space, like it was hers. But today, we flipped the script. Today, I open my space on my terms. And guess what? The gates open to anyone who brings respect, good energy, and love. Asterisk cheers erupted. Someone yelled, "Say that." The music swelled again, and the party resumed with more energy than before. Off to the side, a local news reporter who had once ignored Tyrone's side of the story now stood humbly, asking if she could get a quick interview. Tyrone glanced at her, then politely declined. "This story isn't about me anymore," he said. "It's about all of us." Asterisk later, as the sun began to dip behind the hills, Tyrone sat in a lounge chair, watching the kids play and the neighbors laugh like they had always belonged. For the first time in months, he let himself relax. The battle was over. The point was proven. Asterisk, he didn't just protect his home. He redefined what it meant to own space as a black man in America. Asterisk, and from that day forward, no one, not even a racist Curran, would ever mistake his silence for permission again. Asterisk.